Hi everybody, my name is Tracy Miles and I'm here today to introduce you to a video series that I'll be doing over the next couple of months. Today I'm going to focus on what's called the window of tolerance. This is a theory that was put out by a gentleman named Dr. Dan Siegel. He did some research in brain and body connection. Your window of tolerance is directly connected to attachment. It is designed when you're a kid, basically. Some theories believe it's designed by the time you're 5 years old. So there are 4 levels of attachment. The first is called secure attachment, and secure attachment is what we call a really wide window. And that window is created by caregivers who were super present. They showed up every time you cried, every time you had a need, you had a parent who showed up. They helped you to calm your system. That creates a wide window. Then we have what's called insecure attachment, and there are 2 levels of that. There's insecure avoidant and insecure ambivalent. That's when your caregivers may not have been completely present. It's interesting. I have one client who, she brought me a photograph once to say, Tracy, this is the kind of attachment that I received as a kid. And in the photo, her mom was holding her. There's a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. She's got one of those old black phones under her. She's got the bottle under her chin, and there's a glass of wine. Of course, we all laughed. And because that is what, that's a caregiver who's present, physically present, but like emotionally, mentally avoidant. You also have ambivalent. That is where the caregiver is sometimes there, sometimes not there. The child isn't really sure about the connection between themselves and the parent. So that then what happens is the window begins to close. There's less tolerance for the fluctuations that we have. And then you have what's called disorganized attachment. That's when the window is pretty small and the caregiver actually was harmful to the child. And that means that there's very little tolerance for fluctuations within the system. So next, I'm going to give you a visual of what this window actually looks like. One of the things that we're trying to accomplish when we are presenting you with the window of tolerance, actually in all of our models, is we're trying to introduce you to a language that we can begin to speak together. So here is what this is part of what the window of tolerance looks like. The way that this works, it's connected to the size of your window and it's connected to your central nervous system. Your central nervous system is your protective system. I'm going to do another video all about your central nervous system and introducing that to you, but I am going to use some of the language, which is our goal when we're presenting this. So here you'll see we have what's called the optimal zone. I also call this homeostasis. This is when you're at 0. You are in a calm state. There's not much going on. You're not having any fluctuations. You're relaxed. This is what's called hyper arousal. Your energy shifts and you go into a heightened state of being. And this is referred to as hypo arousal. This is when the system begins to shut down and everything kind of feels numbing, okay? So I'm going to tell you a story about, one day I go for a walk. I'm walking down York Street, and as I'm walking along, I pass the mustard steed, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a black dog. Immediately, I come out of my comfort zone and my heart starts to pound and my energy is starting to rise. That is the very first thing that begins to happen as I'm seeing this dog. Then what happens is I leave my window of tolerance and now my eyes are getting really, really big. I'm scanning, where can I go? I don't know this dog. I'm looking, does this dog have an owner? So my energy is definitely changing. I'm starting to vibrate and I'm feeling nervous. Then the next thing that happens, and we call this in your central nervous system, this is referred to as attach. I am looking for something to attach to. That's going to create safety for me. I don't find anything. Now the dog is kind of hunkering down. And the next thing that's going to happen is the muscles in my legs are going to tighten. And my heart's going to start to pound a little faster. My energy starts to go up. And now I want to go into flight. I'm going to actually start to try to walk away from the dog because I don't know this dog. The next thing that happens, now the dog's like growling and his haunches are up and I'm freaking out inside. And now I'm thinking, I'm going to have to punch this dog, right? So I go into what's called fight. All of my jaw will tighten. I will clench my teeth. My shoulders will come back. I'm going to plant myself. My legs are nice and tight because my system's already engaged in that flight response. And then what happens is I am now going to, like, he's getting closer and he's growling at me, right? Now my system goes into what's called freeze. Now I'm actually, every single muscle is tight in my body. Now I'm freaking out and I'm thinking, I'm gonna have to kill this thing. Then what happens is the dog runs by me and I notice he's actually chasing a squirrel. He wasn't really coming after me at all. So then this heightened sense of, then my energy comes back down. I come back into my window. The system begins to settle. My heart might pound for a little while, but then I come back down into that optimal zone. Now, let's say the dog got me, right? Now he's got my leg and I can't get him off. I'm on the ground. I'm trying to wrestle this dog and now he's biting me. I'm in pain. I'm freaking out. The next thing that's going to happen, if these things within my central nervous system don't work, is my system is going to take me into what's called hypo arousal, and my system is going to shut me down. We call this submit. It's also referred to as fawn. That's a language that you might hear if you're doing some research on the window of tolerance. Or submission. That is another language that you will hear. You just literally, the beauty of our central nervous system is I will just pass out if that dog is attacking me and I'm like gone. So the dog can do what it wants at that point because I'm not going to feel anything or experience anything. I think that that's one of the most beautiful things about our central nervous system. So what's happening within this process is when I am in a state of hyper arousal, my body is dumping adrenaline, cortisol, and epinephrine. This allows me to be strong, fast, and epinephrine actually takes care of any pain that I might be experiencing if I'm in a dangerous situation. When these things do not work in my system, my body's actually going to switch over and it's going to begin to dump different chemicals, which are serotonin, melatonin, and oxytocin, the love drug. There's a woman who wrote a book about being attacked by a bear. I wish I could remember. I say this to everybody. I don't remember the name of the book. I wish I did, but I don't. But the fascinating thing about this book is she takes you through every single one of these processes that she went through in her central nervous system to the point where she's now in hypoarousal and she has this very small moment of time where she talks about that the bear's got her face and she has this memory of her arms coming up and she kind of hugs the bear and she has this moment where she falls in love with the bear and then she blacks out. That's actually what's going to happen if we're truly in danger and you're being attacked and you're on the verge of death. You're going to fall in love with whatever's doing this to you, which is kind of fascinating, right? So oxytocin is the other thing that happens, okay? So when we're working with you, we actually want to begin to help you to create this language so you can help us to understand what your emotional states are. So there are fluctuations that we will experience in a day where we stay within our window of tolerance. So when I'm working with you, I might say, were you in your window? Or I may say, and how far out of your window were you when that happened? So this is a language that we begin to work with back and forth so we can understand where you are in the process of understanding what your emotions are doing. Now, if your window is really small, of course, you're going to get shot out of your window on a regular basis. If your window is much larger, there are some people, I've met a few, they have very wide windows of tolerance and nothing phases them. I'm just like, wow, this is fascinating. or it takes an enormous amount of energy to get them out of their window, okay? And then there is, I think, like there's a lot of people who have that avoidant, ambivalent attachment, and they fluctuate within their window. Like they can get shot out of their window, and then they can get themselves back in pretty quickly. But the people who have that smaller window, they have a hard time getting back in. So our goal when we're working with you is to help you learn ways that you can get yourself back into your window. So if you're in hyperarousal, what we actually want to do is help downregulate. This is the language that we use. We're going to help you to downregulate your system. And if you're in hypoarousal, now hypoarousal kind of looks like depression, apathy, resignation. You know, it's kind of easy to see people who are up in this area, right? You can tell when someone's pretty mad, they're in a fight response. You can tell when someone's in a flight response, they just want to get out. Like, let's go. I don't want to be here, right? There's like an energy of I want to go. When somebody's in hypoarousal, sometimes it can look like it's a freeze response, but it's actually a resignation. They're just done with you. Everything is like shut down, okay? So when someone's in hypoarousal, we want to help them to upregulate. So at Energy Tap, what it is that we do is we help you to learn skills to be able to navigate these two places within your central nervous system. So that's a snippet of the window of tolerance. Next video is going to be focused on what we call the wisdom model. Thanks for listening. Like, holy shit, why am I so upset? Okay, you know what? This is what's happening to me right now. I am going into what's called hyperarousal. Okay, here we go. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, God, okay. Okay.